Howie.
No doubt about it. Let's get to our main man, Devin Jackson, joining us from the Philadelphia Inquirer, one of the best at covering the draft of anybody. So he's going to join us now on the show. Devin, welcome to the show, man. How you doing on this Thursday edition of Birds 365?
Yeah, I'm doing great. 2 weeks out from the NFL draft, and feels like we're finally getting to the end time here, and getting closer and closer to figuring out who the Eagles are going to select at 32, or what they might do in the first round, whether it's trade back or trade out of the first round altogether.
Yeah, good to see you, Devin. I want to give you a chance, by the way, and congratulations. I see you've teamed up with our buddy Ross Tucker for Draft Digest, both in print form and PDF form. Where can the people get that? Because they should certainly invest in that if they want to be prepared for the NFL draft.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know the actual name of the website. I do have the link to it, so I can send that over to you guys. But the link it's called simplecirc.com, and then it's like /subscribe/draft digest. So I can see you guys a link there, and for a chance to get it. But yeah, it's I believe it's only like $5, so relatively cheap. But yeah, it has my prospect rankings, a 7-round mock draft, a look at some of the different team needs for each team. It has a bunch of different information, positional rankings, guys that are projection versus production. There's a lot that went into it. So really looking forward to people taking a look at it and consuming it, and definitely a lot of hard work, but definitely proud of it and the way that it came out.
Yeah, no doubt, man. You've been crushing it. All your draft work is excellent. So we're definitely going to check that out. If you send that over to me, brother, I'll post it up too, so our audience can check it out, because a lot of people like when you join the show and follow your draft work. So we will do that. Devin, I got a general question to start with on this draft. All right, me and Johnny Mac, maybe we're off base, but we've been joking. This draft is just not that exciting. Maybe it's because the Eagles are 32. Maybe it's because we won the Super Bowl. Maybe it's because we might not even pick on Thursday night 2 weeks from now. But what do you think of this draft? Is it a good draft in your eyes? How do you gauge just this overall draft class?
I think it's a draft that you really have to find guys that fit your team, fit roles. I don't think there's as much star power as we're usually used to, and part of the reason is, the lack of top end quarterback talent and lack of top end receiver talent. Obviously last year you look at the class, and I believe the first 14 picks were offensive players. So that just showed you what the star power was, the strength of the draft. This one is going to be a little bit different. Obviously Cam Moore is expected to go number 1 overall, but after that, it could get interesting. Dual Carter and Travis Hunter could go off the board next. Shedeur Sanders could maybe go inside the top 4, or he could slip outside of the top 4. So I really think, once we get to number 3 in the draft, because it seems like the Browns are going to go Travis Hunter, I think it's a little bit more unpredictable. But I think it's been a little bit more fun to dive into the different players that could be available at 32. And I think because the unpredictability of the draft, there's really no guys that you can really pin down for the Eagles, or fairly for anyone after the first 10 picks. I think that's what is going to make this draft so unique, is that I think everyone's going to have a hard time predicting exactly where everyone's going to go. So I think you're really going to get an unpredictable first round. A lot of guys that maybe you think wouldn't go inside the top 15, top 20 end up going. There's some really talented players are going to end up, there late first round, early second round. And I think the biggest strength of this draft really, though, is on day 2, where I think guys from, like 35 to 75 or 80 are ranked about the same. And you could really see some shakeups even on day 2 as well. So I think, this is a draft, I think, of a little bit of acquired taste. Like the defensive line and edge rusher class are really good. And I think they're really going to get drafted quite frequently. But the scarcity of the tackle class, the receiver class at the top, in the quarterback class, I think it's going to make it real interesting for some teams, and you might see a few more trades than we've seen in the past few years inside the top 10, top 15, just because Teams don't know who's going to be available, within a few picks of them. And I think some teams are going to get aggressive to get the guy that they want.
Devin, where do you have Travis Hunter? Because there's so much. Some people say he should be a receiver. Some people say a corner. Some people say both, which I don't know if is realistic in the modern NFL, just from a logistical standpoint and how they do things with meetings during the week. What do you see him as? One thing, he's, to me, he's one of the. To me, there's only two real blue chip players in this draft: Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. That's it for me. That's how good he is. But where does he fit?
Yeah, to me, I really think it depends on what the team that's picking him. What do they have a bigger need at? But for me, I have him as a corner because I think that's where he's the biggest separation is between him and the next player. I like him comfortably over Will Johnson, even though I think Will Johnson is still a really good player. But I really like Hunter's ability, his instincts, his ball skills, his closing speed on the ball. I think it really all fits at corner. And if a team really feels like he can be a weapon on the offensive end, I feel like it's much easier to put packages in for him on offense rather than him playing a full-time receiver and then playing like in certain snaps on defense. So I think it's a little bit easier to get him on on offense in smaller doses than trying to do vice versa. So I think Hunter is going to be a really good corner at the NFL level. I think that's where he can make an immediate impact. I think he could be a really good receiver at the NFL level, but I think his skill set and what he brings to the table as a corner is a little bit more valuable.
I agree with you there. Devin, let me talk Eagles with you. Just looking at these top 30 visits, we got about 21 names so far that we know. A lot of defensive linemen, a lot of offensive linemen, and cornerbacks. They're going cornerback here after double dipping last year. What do you think of the top 30 visits? Do any of the names stick out at you? And does it indicate any philosophy that you think the Eagles might be targeting in this draft?
I think it's a commitment still to the trenches. Obviously, I think they're always going to do their homework on the trenches and players that could be available there at 32 or maybe on day 2 of the draft. So to me, it still signals that's still their philosophy and still what they are looking to do in the NFL draft to draft the trenches to continue to upgrade. Obviously, the right guard spot and the defensive tackle spot are the two spots that could use an upgrade through the draft. Even though I know they have guys at both spots that they feel comfortable with on the roster. But I think that's what that signals. And then the corner spot, I think, again, is doing their due diligence. I would be very surprised if they took a corner with their first pick or even their first 2 picks, just because of what the capital that they put into it, through the draft last year and then some of the additions they made in free agency as well. But I think, as the visits continue to roll through, I think you're going to see maybe a few tight ends on there, maybe a few more safeties. And I think they've done their homework on both of those positions. And I think, again, we can't, take the top 30 as full on. They're going to take one of these guys, but I think it shows the interest in certain positions. I think they'll be in the market for offensive line, defensive line. Ultimately, I think they'll still be on tight end at some point. And then I think we'll maybe get a few tight end visits reported as we get closer to the draft. And then I think, safety is also seems to be somewhat of a priority, and especially for the defensive backs. I think a couple of them, Jacob Parrish and Jalen Smith, who was reported yesterday, both of those guys are a little bit more versatile, could play a few different spots. And I think that's what they're looking for is getting a few versatile guys in the building and seeing what they can do with them.
Yeah, I think everybody, sort of looks at losing Avonte Maddox and saying, it's not that big of a deal. But he played a lot of different positions. And that's what when I saw Jalen Smith, I said, well, there you go. Nickel, outside corner, safety, a little bit of safety. Avonte played slot. He played dime last year. He played safety. You do need depth pieces as well. So It's not always just about the early picks on these top 30 visits, but I'm with you. That's where I was going to go. I always like to look at the themes of it, and I think you're right with the trenches, and it's a deep draft up front, and the Eagles are going to get a defensive front person pretty early. I think I'm pretty confident in saying that. But the absence of the tight ends has surprised me because it's also a deep tight end draft. And there's still 9 to go, so plenty of time, as you mentioned. And I'm sure they're going to look at some tight ends, and there's other ways to do it, as you know, pro days and all that kind of stuff. But I sense some subterfuge in trying to keep these names as close to the best as possible. In a lot of ways, I look at it and say, well, they're taking a tight end at some point. Is that how you look at it, Devin?
Yeah, I think so. I think for them, maybe it's about a guy that they don't want to get out there, that they have big interest in. To me, since the Senior Bowl, I feel like Mason Taylor is a guy that they are really in on and really like. I think they're trying to mask a little bit of that interest just because they know other teams are going to be, in the market for him and want him as a player, has NFL genes in his family and, had a really good career at LSU. And really for the Eagles, it's been a while since they drafted a tight end, at least with a premium pick. I know Grant Calcaterra is like their last one that they drafted. So I think for the Eagles, especially a tight end position that they don't really draft this frequently, I think they're trying to not put too much interest out there, but it certainly feels like they're going to be interested in taking one, and maybe they're going about in a different way and not giving away in the top 30 visits in this particular draft. But we'll see as we get closer to the draft if they, the reports do come out that they end up with a tight end. But I think it might be kind of a gamesmanship move here by the Eagles to not give away the certain tight end prospect they might like and may end up taking early via trade back or via the second round.
Yeah, so I think you're right on the gamesmanship aspect of it. Devin, let me ask you, if the Eagles stick at 32, which, by the way, I don't think is likely to happen, but if they do stick at 32 because the quarterback, nobody wants to trade him for a quarterback or whatever, give me a couple names that you like there that you think could realistically be there. I know this is one of those drafts where it feels like, you see guys mocked at 18 and then 38. It's like they're kind of all over the board, but give me a couple realistic names that you think are a good fit for this Eagles team, based on who they lost and based on what they need right now.
Yeah, so I think, I still feel like Walter Nolan has a good chance to be there at 32, just because of, again, the strength of the class. It may be some teams prefer some other defensive line prospects over him. I feel like he could be within, the few picks of where the Eagles are selecting towards the end of the first round. And maybe he's a guy that I feel like they could end up trading up for and moving up for to get and acquire. I look at Devin Jackson, the Ohio State offensive lineman. I think will be in that range to be selected. Play guard and tackle at the college level for Ohio State and play at a high level, doing both. So I feel like he will be available within a few picks there. And then I look at the edge rusher class and look at Nick Scourton. Or Nick Scorden, I should say, from Texas A&M, who they brought in to for a pre-draft visit. I think he's a guy that, I feel like the NFL likes a little bit more than the consensus. Didn't have quite the season he was expecting to have at Texas A&M, but still a really good player, still a productive player, and will be 21 years old, when he's drafted. So I feel like those three guys to me are certainly in the mix for 32. And if the Eagles do still stick, I think it's going to be one of those three positions that they end up taking, offensive line, defensive line, or edge. Feels like that will be the most bang for their buck and what they value most, especially at the end of the first round.
What do you think? In that vein, I want to add TJ Sanders to the conversation. Where do you think he might land? Do you think he's in that group as well, that he could potentially be there, go a little bit earlier? Because he's a guy, when he popped up, I said, oh, that makes some sense.
Yeah, I think he's a guy more of a day two guy, but I feel like his range starts in the 40s and 50s, just because I think after that first wave of defensive linemen prospects that get off the board, I think he's going to be real coveted on day two. So I think he's more of a day two guy, but I think he certainly is a guy that the Eagles have interest in, and I think he's has powerful hands, is really athletic, can play multiple spots on a defensive line. Did some really nice things as a run defender and pass rusher. I still think he could develop a little bit more as a pass rusher, but I think he brings some three down ability, and he could be a nice addition to the defensive line. That obviously lost Milton Williams and needs another body up front.
Devin, what do you think of Donovan Izaraku from Boston College? That's one of the guys I really like in this draft, who I think maybe could be there, maybe could fall into the trade up range for the Eagles, but they obviously need an edge rusher with life after Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat. What do you think of that player? And do you think they would have a chance to get him sitting where they are right now?
Yeah, Izaraku is a really cool story. Local kid. He's from South Jersey. So obviously there's a lot of ties there. But yeah, he really emerged back on the scene. Had the second most sacks this year in college football, and really showed the ability to use his power, his length, and speed off the edge to get around offensive tackles. And he did a really nice job at the Senior Bowl and also testing at the combine to show that he can be an elite athlete at the NFL level. I think he still has some ways to go a little bit as a run defender, but in terms of the pass rushing ability and the ability to get to the quarterback, he brings that ability right away and has some long arms, even though he's a little bit on the smaller side at 6'1", 247. But I really like Izaraku's game, and is another one of those guys that can drop into coverage, can rush the passer, can be a little bit more of a versatile piece and use, especially on third downs, as a designated pass rusher early in his career as he continues to build out his frame and improve as a run defender. So I think there's a chance he's available at 32. I think, not every team is going to be in on him. And really, I think it depends on how the edge rusher run goes in the first round, just because I feel like the class is really good. But where the teams value this particular edge rusher class is going to be interesting after, guys like Shamar Stewart, Abdul Carter, and if you consider Jalen Walker an edge rusher, where those three guys go off the board, I think it's really going to depend, especially for Stewart and Walker, just because I feel like the map is a little bit all over with them. They feel like both top 15 picks, but where exactly they go, I think it's going to depend on how the back half of the first round shakes out.
One of the more interesting prospects to me, Devin, is, and I saw you liked him, so I want to ask you about him, is Charles Grant, the William and Mary offensive tackle. So obviously lower level of competition, ton of production, great athlete. I could see him being a guy NFL scouts like more than maybe a lot of people. How high do you think he could be? He's another player the Eagles took a look at, and I think, it's gonna be a trenches draft. But if you take Scorton, say, with your first pick, and you're hoping for Charles Grant at 64, I don't think he's going to be there. What do you think the ceiling is with him in this draft?
Yeah, he feels like a guy that is going to be really coveted as kind of the developmental offensive lineman, where you bring him in the building and you continue to help him fill out his frame and continue to develop his skill sets. I really like his movement ability. I think he's one of the more athletic offensive linemen in the draft. His ability to cut off backside defensive tackles in the run game, his easy athleticism and footwork that he shows in getting in his pass sets. And he's a former wrestler. I know a lot of coaches across the league really like guys on the offensive line that are former wrestlers and have that wrestling background. And he wrestled up until his junior year of high school, where he finally picked up football. So he's still relatively new to the game and still relatively new to the game of football and playing at this level. And he played, I believe, at a little over 300 pounds after playing around 280, 290 for a couple of years at William & Mary. So he's a little bit on the lighter side, but I think he's got swing tackle potential and potential, right tackle of the future as well. So I think for his range, I think it'll be interesting and to depend on if they feel like he can start right away or if he feel like he needs to sit and develop for a little bit. Because I think realistically he will be there at 64 if it's the latter where they feel like he needs to sit there and develop and maybe not start right away. So I think there's a chance that he's there at the end of the second round, early third round. That feels like kind of his range and where he should go and end up going, just because I feel like, on day two, especially in that second round, you're looking for guys that can start, as soon as next year, as soon as they get into the league. So I feel like if he's more in that bucket where teams feel he's a little bit more developmental guy, I could see him slip into the third round just because he's not ready to play right away.
Devin, let me ask you about Maxwell Hairston, the cornerback out of Kentucky. That's a guy I think maybe available in the second round for the Birds. You said you might not think you don't think they're going to pick a corner with those first two picks. I'm with you. I don't think so either, but that's a guy I might make a change. That's a guy I might have different feelings about if he's available in round two. What do you think of that player?
Yeah, he's a really explosive player, a little bit on the smaller side, but has some excellent route recognition ability. I think he excels best in zone coverage, which obviously the Eagles play a lot of zone and play a lot of match cover zone coverage. So I think he would fit perfectly for what they do. But he's real competitive at the catch point. Obviously has the speed, had a 4.28 second 40-yard dash at the combine and really explosive athlete. And I think he's a guy that, battled a little bit of injuries in his final year at Kentucky, but when he was on the field, was extremely valuable and really shut his side of the field down. So I really like his ability. I think there's a chance that maybe, you see him as more of a nickel, maybe you see him as more of an outside corner, which can depend on his stock a little bit. But I think he has enough length and size to stick out outside corner. And it certainly would be interesting for the Eagles to take an early round pick again on defensive back. But with the type of athlete he is, the type of ball skills he has, I can see them certainly be interested in him, especially if he's one of those guys that's available maybe via trade back and the Eagles feel like they can get him with good value. Obviously, you saw the Eagles drafted Cooper DeJean last year at around pick 40. And if Harrison is there around pick 40 and they trade back, I could certainly see them being interested in taking him. I just would be surprised if they take one early, but I get for Hairston what he brings to the table, the ball skills, the skill set, everything he brings to the table makes a lot of sense that they're interested in him.
At safety, Devin, there was an interesting visit with Penn State's Jalen Reed. You see the Eagles' philosophy when they want a young player to step up, they sort of get an insurance policy. For Kaylee Ringo, they have Adoree Jackson. For Tyler Steen, they have a couple of bodies, including Matt Pryor. Bring him back. Kenyon Green. They do it all the time. They want to make guys earn something. With Sidney Brown at safety, there's no obvious insurance policy yet. Justin Simmons is trying to lobby himself here after the draft. We'll see if that works out. But is Jalen Reed, can you go about it that way and say, all right, between Sidney Brown and Jalen Reed, maybe we can get competition, let the best man win? Is he that type of prospect? Where would you say Jalen Reed is?
Yeah, Jalen Reed was really interesting. Really interesting visit. Just because I feel like his skill set mirrors a little bit of what Sidney Brown does best. In terms of being more near the line of scrimmage and having some ball skills and being able to take the ball away. Over the middle of the field and being kind of inserted into the run game. So I think they're a little bit of mere copies in who they are as players and what they do best. But Reed really stepped up this year with Kevin Winston Jr. Being hurt early in the season and him having to fill multiple roles. He's played in the nickel. He's played more of the dual safety role at Penn State. He's played some single high coverage at Penn State as well. So he's another one of those versatile guys that's done a little bit of everything. But obviously, I think his best skill set is playing near the line of scrimmage and being a little bit more inserted into the box. So I think for Reed, I think he would be more of a depth piece than someone that I think competes right away for a starting spot. So I feel like he'd be a little bit more of an insurance for Sidney Brown if they do end up selecting him. I think he's a 3rd or 4th round pick, somewhere in that range. Makes the most sense for Reed, but I really like Reed and what he brings to the table as a player, physicality wise. Defending the run and being active in both the short area passing game and over the middle of the field. I think that's where you deploy him and where he works best.
Devin, you think it makes sense for this Eagles team to be trading out of this 32 overall? I know that's kind of the common line of thinking because we're Eagles fans and we watch Howie shake and bake every draft. But does that make the most sense? I mean, you got takes 2 to tango. A lot of teams might want to trade back. Do you see the Eagles trading back in this year's first round?
I feel more confident about that than them trading up, just because I feel like they want to get some more day 2 picks and be able to take advantage of where the strength of the draft is, which is those 2nd and 3rd rounds, and being able to stack picks a little bit. And obviously they have 8 selections in this draft, and a good bit of them are coming on day 3, so they can move around a little bit, and continue to, take some really good players and fill, some more needs, or maybe not even necessarily needs, but filling more potential holes on a roster down the line. So I think it will make sense to trade out of 32, especially if they don't have the 1st or 2nd guy that they really like on the board still, and continue to get into more of those day 2 and day 3 picks. So you can package them if you feel like there's other guys within that 2nd and 3rd round range that are worth trading up a little bit more for, or trading a little bit back to accumulate more future picks. It feels like that's what Howie Roseman wants to do, and certainly I would expect teams to reach out to them. But like you said, it takes 2 to tango, and you got to be a little bit aggressive, before you even get to 32. To get a trade done. So I think unless they really have their top guy on the board fall down the board, I could see them trading back and getting some more day 2 picks to take advantage of the strength of the draft.
At @RealD_Jackson, make sure you follow Devin on the X platform. Does a tremendous job, as you can hear, on the NFL draft. You can read them at the Philadelphia Inquirer, inquirer.com. There was Draft Digest. We'll give you that link as well. You can order that. I recommend that highly. So I want to, whether it's drafting at 32, targeted trade up, targeted trade down, going to mention some of the names we already have. And I want to give you the highest floor. I want you to give me the highest floor of the prospect and the highest ceiling guy. So you mentioned Walter Nolan, throw in Nick Scourton, throw in Donovan Jackson, and Josh Connerly, who we haven't mentioned. As those seem like guys that could be 32, 28, 35, 40. Of that group, give me the highest ceiling and the highest floor.
I think the highest ceiling is Walter Nolan, just because he's really starting to have that light bulb turn on and starting to turn the corner in terms of putting all together. You saw it light up at Ole Miss this year after not so productive years at Texas A&M. So I think he certainly would be up there in terms of the highest ceiling. I think Connerly would be not far behind him because Connerly was a former high school running back turned offensive tackle. And has only played, a couple of years out on the edge, and he continued to develop and continue to really turn the corner. And you kind of saw the light turn on for him as well this year, and becoming a really good pass protector and understanding some of his movement skills in the running game. So those would be the top two for me. I think the highest floor is Donovan Jackson, because you know exactly what you're getting from him. You know exactly the player that he is. You know, his ability to play both guard and tackle. He's going to be a day one starter from day one. And if you're taking Jackson, you feel confident that he will start at right guard, you know, for the Eagles in week one. Otherwise, you wouldn't be taking him that early. So I think Jackson has the highest floor. And I think Nick Scourton is somewhere in the middle. You know, I think he's a guy that you saw some of the highs with him at Purdue and Texas A&M, but still has some development left to go. So, but that's how I would see it. I think, you know, for Walter Nolan, he has the highest ceiling, and Donovan Jackson has the highest floor.
Donovan Jackson has no relation to the great Devin Jackson, does he?
No, he doesn't.
No, good stuff there. Devin Jackson, we appreciate it, man. Make sure you guys follow him, as John mentioned, at @RealD_Jackson. And real quick, Devin, I got the link I saw you sent. I'm going to put it in the chat right now for everybody. Just give us a quick synopsis of what that is, and I'm going to put it in because we do have a lot of guys who really love the NFL draft. So I'm going to purchase mine, and I'll drop the link in the chat as well for the people.
Yeah, so, you know, teaming with Ross Tucker, who did a lot of the team profiles and, you know, showing some of the team needs that they have, you know, what position they could end up drafting and taking in the class, players that they might be interested in. So I think that's such a great resource. And then for me, you know, like I mentioned, has a top 100 for this year's draft, and how I see the players being ranked. Has a 7-round mock draft where I pick for every team and every selection. And then it's kind of all listed together by team, all their team picks, and some of the priorities that each team will look to add or will end up adding. And then positional breakdowns where I go through every position and look at the top 10 players at each position, you know, from quarterback to offensive line to you know, defensive tackle and or edge rushers. Each one is kind of broken down by the 10 best that I see, and a little synopsis of some of the players included in each one. And then some features on some guys that are, you know, more production guys and guys that could contribute right away, and some guys that may be a little bit more projections and what they bring to the table. They might be a little bit more of an acquired taste, and a look ahead to the 2026 class and some top names that will be floating around this time next year.
Good stuff, Devin. We appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for joining. Make sure you guys all go follow Devin, read all his work. We appreciate it, Devin. We'll talk to you again maybe after the NFL draft, after the Eagles make some of their selections. We'll get your wrap up on what they did. We appreciate it, brother.
Awesome. Thanks so much again, guys, and looking forward to chatting again.
All right, cool. There's
Thanks, Devin. Appreciate it.
Here on Birds 365. We appreciate him. Always has great breakdowns, Johnny Mack, of the players here in this NFL draft. But just 2 weeks out, brother, getting closer to this draft for the Birds and to see what they're going to do. They got a lot of work to do to rebuild this, obviously, Super Bowl caliber team, #1 defense in the NFL. So a lot of work to be done, Johnny Mack.
Yep. And I think Devin is 100% right. This is going to be a trenches draft, but, you know, also figure out a way how to get a tight end in there. I think there's some subterfuge going on with the tight ends, and the Eagles being very quiet on that front, because it's pretty deep tight end draft. Not talking about Warren. Don't get excited. All the Penn State people, they're not going to be in a position to get him, or even Loveland from Michigan. But after that, and it starts with Taylor, who's obviously, you know, has the great NFL genetics, as Devin mentioned, son of Jason Taylor. Great pass rusher for the Dolphins. So starts with him, but there's some other good ones as well. Kid from Oregon is a potential. They got to do something at tight end. I feel very comfortable saying that. And that's even if for some bizarre reason things do work out with Dallas Goedert, they still need to think about the future, because in the best case scenario, this is probably a lame duck year for Dallas Goedert. Then you got to start thinking about the future and who the next tight end is. So if you can get a Mason Taylor, you can get and Elijah Aurora from Miami, if you can get a Terrence Ferguson from Oregon, Gunnar Helm from Texas, they got to get something, even if it's Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame, a good blocking tight end. Harold Fannin, makes a lot. I brought up Bowling Green before. He's a great receiver at Bowling Green.
Yeah. Not my favorite fit for the Eagles.
He's so undersized, though. I don't, he's more of a receiving team, and they're a running team right now. And so I don't necessarily see the fit there, but there's a lot of good tight ends in this draft.
No doubt about it. Let's get to our last super chat here. Seth Shifley checking in. What's up, Seth? Hope you're doing well, brother. Appreciate your super chat. He says, Big Z and J-Mac, who are your top three day 3 dark horses in this draft? Ooh, that's tough. Top 3 is tough.
Oh, day 3. Well, for the Eagles, I mean, I think you've seen them. I'll focus on the Eagles. Jalen Smith is a guy who, I think they're pretty clear what they're doing there. That's a day 3 guy. And he can play a lot of different positions in the secondary. So I would not be surprised. I would expect him to be here, to have 4th, 5th round picks. I don't think they're going to use them all.
Right.
That's his range, maybe even a little bit quicker if they like that player. Tyler Barron's another guy like that, edge rusher, because I think you're going to see multiple bodies on the defensive front. So he's more of a day 3 guy. And they want potentially 2 edge rushers. And then you're not even talking about Josh Uche and hopefully Azeez Ojulari. So I could see that happening. And then some of the other guys, offensive line, I think Jalen Travis, the Iowa State tackle, he's a day 3 guy. You might have to trade up to get him a little bit. Elijah Roberts, another edge guy, he's a day 3 guy, but more of a higher level, I would say, than Tyler Barron. And Jaden Blue is the running back they look at, big speed guy. Future, he's a potential day 3 guy. So those are some of the names I been connected to the Eagles and would make some sense as developmental players.
Yeah, about Mason Taylor is one that I'm interested to see where he goes. That tight end from LSU. Obviously, his father was Jason Taylor, but I like him. And the other guy I like, I don't know if he's going to be higher than day 3. He might be a day 2 guy, but Darius Alexander from Toledo probably knows Quinyon Mitchell well, played there together. But I like him as a defensive tackle if they're not able to get one of their top DTs. But he might be a day 2 guy. He might be a round 3 or maybe even a round 2 guy. So we'll see. But those are a couple dark horses in the draft. Seth, appreciate you for checking in on that super chat. Johnny Mac, great show today, brother. Started a little late. My flight didn't get in last night till about 3 a.m. So flight industry is the worst in the game, man. So, but
you don't mention the airline name. You don't want to do that. What does it rhyme with? Shamerican, or does it rhyme with Felta?
It doesn't rhyme with either of the two.
I didn't get it.
It's Druntier. I don't know how to say something that rhymes with that, but
was it a Tampa flight? Where were you?
I was
in
Southwest Florida, so I was in Fort Myers, flying from there back to. I actually flew to Trenton because it was the only night flight that I love
flying to Trenton
because it's a small airport. I had a check bag because I was supposed to be there for a week, and I get off the plane. I'm like, the check bag's already coming through that tiny little airport, so it's perfect.
I love flying out of Trenton. Yeah, it's a big.
Yeah, I try and avoid the Philly airport.
Yeah, it's a nice place to fly out of. But if you're flying out of
here, you get what you pay for. That's true.
If you're flying out of Fort Myers to Trenton, yeah, you just factor in a 15-hour wait.
Yeah, literally, no doubt. But Frontier's kind of got a grip on the Philly or Northeast to Florida route because a lot of people do that. Frontier has now made it so it's like you know, they're the number one option, even if they suck ass. But that's what it is. Johnny Mac, great show today, brother. Your final thoughts on this Thursday edition. Man, we're cruising through almost another week down. We'll have a Football Friday edition tomorrow, and we'll be 13 days away from the NFL draft.
Well, now that you talked about flying out of Trenton, that's my final thought. I true story. First time I ever flew out of Trenton. I've done it quite a few times now, but first time ever. I drove up. I parked like it was my house, about three spots away from.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, obviously I can't stay here. I'm looking for, where do I park, basically. And I find somebody who works at the airport, and they're like, "No, you're good. You're fine."
Yeah, you're right there. It's like $2 a day to park too. Yeah, I like the smaller airport. I see somebody mention the Newark airport. It's a little further from my house, so. But
Newark's huge.
I try and avoid the Philly airport.
But that was, and by the way, now you say it's $2 a day. It was nothing then. That was many years ago. It was free. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I said, well, my car's getting towed, because I'm like, what am I doing? What? I can't leave my car here. And I found somebody, and he's like, no, you're good. You're fine. Unbelievable.
Good stuff. Johnny Mac, great stuff, brother. We'll talk to you tomorrow on a Football Friday of Birds 365. Thank you for doing it today, brother.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. There's Johnny Mac. John McMullen, the #1 Eagles beat reporter in town. Give him a follow on X at JF McMullen, one of the best accounts on X, one of the best